Incidentally, when I started doing RCIA here at St. Brendan, it was Mike's mom, Ruth, was in charge of the program. Some of you may have known her if you've been. She was here last year sponsoring someone. So consider, yeah, she's short, but consider her also kind of a mentor for me in this respect. So it's always great to have Ruth back here sometime, give a talk. But it's always nice to have you here with us. And they gave a talk back then on this topic. We're bringing them back in on marriage and the family. And we're going to get into something that's called, maybe you are familiar with it or maybe you aren't, but by the end of this course or class you should understand what we mean. We use natural family planning. We're going to get into that aspect of it too. Okay, without further ado, just go ahead and get us started. All right? If you want to, we already started with a prayer, but if you want to lead with another prayer for your talk, that's perfectly fine. So, this is back over here. Great.
I always like starting anything with the Hail Mary, but honestly, so if you guys would indulge me. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with you. Let's start that So kind of just to like start off, Stacey's actually going to lead most of it. I'm really here more for comedy relief than anything like that. But truthfully, this talk, and like James said, we talked on this a couple of years ago. It's the kind of topic that I'm sure all you guys get could take days to honestly do. And so to try and pack it into a 30-minute talk is next to impossible. What we like to do is kind of give you some food for thought and kind of get things going, because you're already on that path, because you're already searchers if you're here in RCIA to begin with. And so we're going to throw out some points that will give you something to kind of try and follow up on your own. Anything from the Bible, the Catechism, to asking James anything?
Yeah, actually, you mentioned 30 minutes. You've got a little over an hour. Just so you don't have to rush.
That was probably an exaggeration. Okay. But really, even an hour, is something that, could take a long time to try and unpack anything you do. But please, if you get one thing out of this, it's to go out and actually search for the rest of it. Go looking further into it. The Catechism gets really deep. The Bible gets really deep. There's all kinds of literature that you can get pointed to by anybody, any of your leaders here towards education. So anyway, sorry, just throwing that out.
So in talking and researching about the sacrament of marriage through the years, we came across this story about this elderly couple as we're talking, thinking about 50 years from now, when we were first married, that is, where we wanted to be. And I just love this story about this older couple that had spent 50 years together, and they're sitting back like you do most times when you're married, and you sit back at the end of the night, you're kind of reminiscing, you're talking about stuff. And that's what they were doing. They were talking about their life, and one night, and they were just reflecting on the good things, the things that maybe they struggled with and everything. And then they got to where, at one point, the wife goes, "Do you remember even that one when you used to just nibble on my ear?" And the husband looked, and he just left. He left the room. Slower than probably he did 50 years prior, but he left the room. And she was like, "What did I say?" We were reminiscing about our love and our marriage and all the things we've been through, and he just got up and left. And she's like, "Honey, what did I say? What did I do?" So he comes back in, he's got a little grin, and he goes, "I just had to get my tea." I know. I start with that, because my husband's always like, "Please don't."
Well, because when she references, so cute. She always looks at me when she references the elderly couple. What makes you think of elderly couples?
So anyway, we thought we would start with with the Bible, and then we'll move into the Catechism, and then just our personal experience, okay? And that is you, my love.
Where's that
Right here. Sorry. There you go.
So, the living sacrament, marriage. Matrimony is a sacrament, and as such, it is a sign to the world of the invisible God living in our midst. The living God who bears fruit in the lives of two people. So that's kind of what we want you guys to be sort of digesting as we're sort of going through these things. Looking at background of the Bible, and having some biblical scholars in the room, they can give you any number of other examples. So the first couple that sort of come to mind You read here the way Stacy put it. Marriage comes from the loving hand of God, who's created both male and female in the image, as we read in Genesis in the Old Testament. Man leaves his father and mother, clings to his wife, and the two of them become one body. And there's a lot of argument and a lot of confusion in the world, especially recently, when it comes to distinguishing people specifically from one another, as people, then specifically from their parents as a whole. In the New Testament, Jesus then reiterates, going back to the teachings from Genesis, but saying, in the beginning of creation, God made them male and female. And for this reason, that's why he'll leave his father and mother and be joined to his wife, and they'll become one flesh. And so, like that original saying that I gave to you, this should end up being a reflection of God's relationship with each of us, a deep personal spousal relationship. And coming into the Catholic Church, you'll see parallels when they start talking about the bridegroom of Christ. And it actually references a lot of parallels to the sacrament of marriage. And when you start looking at it, where did Christ actually reveal his divinity to the world? And this is a real question. So you guys feel at Cana. What happened at Cana?
He turned the water into wine.
Now, what was going on?
He ran out of wine.
Yeah, well, no, I'm saying you're saying all the right things, but it was a wedding. The broader thing is it was actually at a wedding, and this is where and if he's going to announce his divinity to the world through his mother, at a wedding, that probably tells you that he finds weddings being something rather important, and that's kind of always stuck in the back of my head. So yeah, and I tend to think of things kind of very simply because I'm rather simple, and apparently can't find my teeth except when I need them late at night. In Ephesians, in the New Testament.
Actually, he can read, or does anyone like to read?
Ephesians chapter 5, verse 22 to 32. Can somebody grab that for me?
Chapter 5?
Chapter 5, verse 22 to 32.
I can read it.
Great,
Thank you.
Verse what?
Wives and husbands,
22 to 32.
be subordinate to one another out of reverence for Christ. Wives should be subordinate to their husbands as to the Lord. For the husband is head of his wife, just as Christ is head of the church, he himself the Savior of the body. As the church is subordinate to Christ, so wives should be subordinate to their husbands in everything. Husbands, love your wives even as Christ loved the church and handed himself over for her, to sanctify her, cleansing her by the bath of water with the word, that he might present to himself the church in splendor, without spot or wrinkle or any such thing, that she might be holy and without blemish. So husbands should love their wives as their own bodies. He who loves his wife loves himself, for no one hates his own flesh, but rather nourishes and cherishes it, even as Christ does the church, because we are members of this body.
So that's kind of... Does that mean anything to anybody? Does it get anything? Does it seem... It's like some people start off reading that and they'll say, subordinate. What's that all about? So when he's mentioning subordinates in that sense, do you get an impression, James? In your mind, by subordinate, what is he referencing?
As wives being subordinate to their husbands?
Yes.
What's he referencing?
Yeah, not in the sense...
He's talking about from this passage.
From that passage.
Well, of course, he goes on and says he's speaking allegorically.
Right.
He says it in the passage. So basically saying that as the church is to Christ, as husband is to wife.
Right. And that's the relationship I'm kind of shooting for in this setting. It's because when you're talking subordinates, you're not talking about it in a slave sense. You're talking about it in the sense that you love them so much that you're willing to sacrifice anything for them. And then it goes on to talk about how he finds his goal is to make her holy. Is that what the phrase was? And that's, you're talking about making her holy. And if you want to actually make her holy, and if you look at the Mass itself, you're looking at how we try to make the altar beautiful, physically beautiful. We use incense as almost like a reflection of perfume. And if I'm wrong, you guys stop me when it comes to things like that. But you're actually trying to make this entire experience very loving in every sense you can possibly think of. And the same thing with your wife. You want to actually... There's a story that goes back in the Old Testament that talks about what is that thing? Like it was Eve that actually bit off the apple, right? So I used to give Stacy grief, and I'd be like, well, if you guys hadn't bit the apple, we'd be fine. This would still be eaten, right? And she was like, well, if you were taking care of the garden the way you should have been, then the serpent, actually the Leviathan, wouldn't have been there to offer the apple in the first place, right? Because when you start, which I thought was interesting, that I need to be doing a better job of actually paying attention. Why was I not guarding the garden in the first place? Make sense? I mean, am I getting? I'm trying not to get too deep because I'm not anywhere near.
Matthew has a great stories about that where the man was guilty because he didn't protect his wife.
Exactly.
That's the whole thing.
Yeah, I had not ever really heard that until I heard someone talk about marriage before, and I was like, that's so very interesting, but very true.
It is very true. And the thing is, a lot of times, especially, is anybody in here here because they are getting married? You guys? No? Okay, because that's why.
We're about to get married. Okay.
So, we haven't there's the Holy Spirit, like perfectly timing. You're about to understand what the force really is. That's actually how we experienced RCA originally. Stacy was I'm the cradle Catholic, and Stacy is the convert, and you'll find the converts end up being much more astute in the details of the faith. Truly, because as a cradle Catholic, a lot of us, I didn't come up, actually learning or understanding a lot of this stuff because either I was too young when somebody did mention it, or I just was a little dense. But in these kind of classes, it's great because you end up coming into the faith or coming into marriage with a full understanding of exactly what the Catholic Church expects you to be. So, and it's all for the good of both of them, not just one. And it's kind of hard. I mean, society. Do you have any interesting or positive role models for Catholic marriages out there? I mean, why are you thinking? You know what? Let's just go ahead and convert to Catholic. Are you both going to be converts, or are either of you cradle Catholic and the other ones?
I'm cradle Catholic, kind of, as far as like we haven't been, every single Sunday
practicing
Christmas, Easter,
sure,
kind of Catholics, and so I've had that, and then I've just chosen to pursue it further, and then just come along as well.
Excellent. Come on. That's awesome. Well, so I mean, has this stuff started kind of opening your eyes at actually taking these classes? Is it sort of, since you were the cradle Catholic, fat little babies is what we used to call them. That's what I was. Like, we were the Christmas, Easter Catholics. Like, we're happy, got baptized and all that good stuff, and then we weren't really super at practicing the faith. I mean, are you getting an education in what it is? Mm-hmm. I was amazed at like how deep the history is and the reasons why, because a lot of it's not just the what, but the why. Why do we kneel on one knee? Why do we kneel on the right knee versus the left knee? Is that right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. When you genuflect, there's one's for respect for a king and one's respect for the King of Kings. What is the incense all about? That kinds of thing. What's the difference between transubstantiation and consubstantiation? I'm sure you guys, if you haven't already gone through things like that, you will. So, I mean, do you have examples out there where you're looking and I'm like, oh yeah, that's the kind of married couple I want to be?
I was thinking actually, like, I don't watch much TV, but I was trying to think, is there anybody on TV that's like a positive role model for marriage? I really couldn't think of anybody unless maybe Tim Tebow got married, but like, I was having a hard time.
What's that show with Tom Selleck?
Blue Bloods?
What?
Blue Bloods.
Blue Bloods? I have not seen that, but I've seen clips
but my
of
mom loves
Patrick.
It. She's like binge watching Netflix, but she's like, have you seen this? I'm like,
I don't have
Tom Selleck? Is that the mustache guy?
So anyway, we were just thinking, like, there really isn't, like, I mean, if you watch a lot of TV, there's not really positive role models out there, so you kind of have to surround yourself with some positive role models, to be there for the success of your marriage. And then what does the Catholic Church teach about the marriage? If you guys, I think you said, did most people get this or no?
So this is where we transition from, like, brief Bible talk to catechism type stuff.
So I'm going to...
Which again is online, right? You can actually pull it up on
a sacrament. So there are 7 of them, and marriage obviously is very, it's one of the 7, so it's very important that it was raised to the level of a sacrament, which is what I love about our Catholic faith. Growing up Protestant, it is just a different viewpoint for marriage, but I'll get into that a little bit later. Sacrament is that sign of grace. It's that outward sign of inner grace. So you're getting that beautiful grace with each sacrament. So when you go and have reconciliation, or when you go and receive the Eucharist, each time you're getting a beautiful grace. You also get that with your marriage, which is why you want to constantly work on it and make sure you're moving forward in that beautiful sacrament and nourishing it. If you look in the Catechism, which I have tabs, if you ever have those are so wonderful to have. In 1600s, let me pull it up, I wanted to show you. You've got this whole sacrament of matrimony. I mean, just this whole beautiful reading about the sacrament of marriage. I love this book, being a congressman who went through RCIA, just picking up different things when I had questions, and the topics were usually always there. But it said, sacred scripture begins the creation of man and woman in the image and likeness of God, as Mike talked about earlier, what's in the Bible. Scripture speaks throughout marriage and its mystery as an institution and the meaning God has given it, its origin and its end, its various realizations throughout history of salvation, the difficulties arising from sin, and its renewal in the Lord in the new covenant of Christ and the church. And the reason why I kind of wanted to point out, like it says it's a mystery and it's an institution. It's this, it's raised up to a certain level. Because if you think about marriage, it's never ending. We make these vows, and they're till death do us part. Think about that, and the reverse would be like a contract. You have all these special things that you lay out in a contract. You know, it's got a beginning, it's got an end, it's got these special stipulations, and if it doesn't work out, you just break it, right? Or you just get out of it. There's always ways to get out of contracts. That's kind of was my view of marriage prior to becoming Catholic. You know, if it didn't work out, that's all right. We'll start over. We'll figure out something else. And I was kind of raised like that. I was raised like, what if, you know, that doesn't work out? Make sure you get your college education just because, what if? And make sure you get a good job because, what if? And I finally was like coming into marriage going, all right, I got to be ready. Got to be able to pull the trigger if I need to, which is a terrible way to...
Trigger.
Not that trigger. But it took me a while to wrap my head around how I was raised to always be looking out for myself, trying to protect myself, and not really giving up 100% and letting God be in control. So I'm kind of OCD, so I like to have control, and I like to know what's going to happen. And so just giving that trust to God and letting Him lead was really hard for me. But it really, as we began through our marriage several years in, and just studying about marriage and reading through the Catechism and understanding what the Bible teaches, I finally realized, you know, I've got to just let God be in control. He knows the ultimate end. I don't. It's not a contract. We're here. So no matter what, if He squeezes the toothpaste wrong or whatever, we are here together. And He doesn't do that. It's me, actually. But,
He doesn't pull the trigger?
He doesn't pull the trigger yet. Thankfully.
It's only my thumbprint that'll open the safe, so she doesn't have access to any trigger.
So one of the things I think about just with that, when you're like giving of yourself to your spouse, that 100% of what the world teaches, you know the song. Who sang the song? What have you done for me lately? I don't know.
Janet Jackson?
No, Whitney Houston.
It was Janet Jackson.
No. See, I don't know music. But that song, I just think about that, and that's not like I'm going to give you this 50, and then you better meet me here. No, it's about giving over 100 if you can every time. It comes back around, and there's times where you're not all on the same page, but if you're giving and sacrificing, it works out, no matter what bumps in the road you get. And we've had bumps in the road, illnesses, and you name it, and life, and kids, and just stuff, but you have to let God be in control of that. And how do you make the sacramental marriage work is by the grace of God, like I said, through the sacraments and so forth, and having your marriage be Christ-centered. And you guys are obviously on that pathway, for those of you who are married or getting married, because you're here, and that's wonderful. I think one of the biggest things about once you make that marriage commitment and that sacrament is knowing that It's more than a feeling. Love is just more than a feeling. It's an act. It's a daily act of will. And
that's right. There was a priest we actually I used to listen to years ago. He did a series on the catechism every Sunday for years and years and years. And he said that love is not an emotion; it is an act of will. Literally every single day. Like I can. There are different versions of love, right? I mean, huh?
Is that Fulton Sheen?
Yeah, it was actually. I think it was Fulton Sheen being quoted by Father Karapi at the time. but it was. But it's true, and actually in the Latin or Greek text, there are several different versions of the word love. You know, I can love my dog Spot. You know, or I can love bratwurst. You know, but to yeah. But there's another kind of love, and I forget exactly what the Latin words were for that, but there are different versions of it. And if I love you to that extent, then that elevates it to a whole other level of truly loving somebody. And when you talk about the bumps and things you go through, it's going to happen. and there are some of them you're not going to be able to get through without the help of somebody else, but by the grace of God. You know, I mean, that phrase came about for a reason. It's a fact. You need to have something there. And there were times when I'm sure Stacy, it's way long ago. She's way past that now because she really enjoys every single day with me. At the time, it was it might have been a challenge. She was ready to throw her hands up and go, but it's one of those. If you sit back and kick through it, I mean, it's amazing the rewards that come through it. And we actually sat down not that long ago. Actually, we've gone through the years, and every time we've actually pushed through, or over another hill or mountain or whatever it was we felt like it was in front of us, we've actually come to a reward that we never even fathomed before. Like things have just gotten exponentially better. It was totally unexpected, and that's not because we're the best Catholics out there or anything like that. But if you actually sort of resign your will to say, I'm okay with, all right, God, you know what? I don't believe in predestination, and I don't believe the church ascribes to it, but they do ascribe to the fact that something good can come out of every experience you have, and you can be guided through a positive outcome. And that's kind of the way that we end up looking at a lot of the things now, thankfully. At the very beginning, we probably didn't. At the very beginning, I sort of lived my life through what Tom said from where she used to work. He said, Mike, I want you to understand when you get married, it's better to be happy than to be right. And that actually has sort of, it has guided me through, and it is sort of a funny saying, but it's true. It is better to be happy, because how do I end up being happy? It's where we come to a compromise. We're coming to something, you come this way and I'll come that way a little bit. And it works, I'm sorry. Pardon me?
Happy wife, happy life.
Well, there's several different variations on that thing, but yeah, it's exactly right.
I've been married 43 years, and my wife's never made a mistake.
Ever? Sounds like a happy marriage.
And then in Hebrews, I think about often that call to holiness. Hebrews 12:14 is one of my favorite verses. We're called to holiness, or we're called to try to elevate each other. And my whole role, his role, is to try to help each other get to heaven. So we have to sacrifice for each other. We have to pray for each other. And sometimes you think that holiness is just for those saint people, right? No, it's for us too.
Can anybody pull that up? Hebrews chapter 12, verse 14. It's kind of a good one.
Our famous Bible reader over there. I'll have it in 2 seconds.
Hebrews what?
Chapter 12, verse 14.
Okay.
Go ahead.
More or less. 12:14. Strive for peace with everyone, and for that holiness, without which no one will see the Lord. Is that it?
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome.
And that just sticks out to me because you have to have that peace. And you want to keep that peace within your marriage. No matter what, at the end of the day, it's not worth whatever it is. You have to strive for that peace and continue that call and goal to holiness. And also, marriage is a vocation. So we felt called to marriage. It's not for everyone. Not everyone is called to that vocation.
So what is a vocation? Is anybody able to look that up? Is that referenced in the catechism? Probably?
I don't know.
There are different kinds, right? Bessie, Father Paul, and
He's back there right now.
Oh, well.
Calling or destiny we
Thank you.
have in this life.
hereafter. God has created the human person to love and serve Him. The fulfillment of the vocation is eternal happiness.
Right. And so does it give examples of what different vocations may be?
Yeah, so I'll
There's
go
several
over
different
that,
versions.
yeah. And it's marriage, it's obviously the priesthood. It could be the single life, it could be the consecrated life. But you have to pray for that and figure out what God is wanting and calling you to be and to do. And for us now as parents, it's all actually praying for our children and their vocation. So now that we've come to marriage, so praying for your children and that God will lead them in their vocation.
Yeah, and I don't know that there's a concrete call that you actually hear. I didn't hear God's actual voice saying, "Get married to Stacy." Now, honestly, when I was in high school, I felt like I'm sure. Yeah, but that was actually Stacy on the intercom in the house that said, "Go get married to Stacy." I actually thought I had a vocation of priesthood when I was in high school, and so I actually felt very strongly pulled towards. And that doesn't mean that I necessarily ignored a call that I felt like I had. However, I might have just misunderstanding, or perhaps it evolved into wanting to get married. Maybe God wanted me to fulfill something else through getting married to Stacy in this particular vocation, and who knows what our kids will end up becoming. So that's a very powerful thing, that once you get married and start having kids, getting them to sort of pray for your vocation as being married. The prayers of children are incredibly strong, and you kind of want anybody to be praying for you. Yeah.
It's just making me think about the word discernment, because it's kind of a word that's a little tough these days, but for the priesthood or for marriage or for any vocation, there's always discernment, and a lot of times we forget that part. It's just that's why when I was that age, or 24, I wasn't discerning anything. I was just following whims and going every way. But now, if you can discern, and that they did, and he did, because he was maybe within the priesthood, that was part of discernment. And I had a son that was called to the priesthood, sort of, not really called to it, but he was called to discernment for 7.5 years. And now he's married, so God will work through those discernments.
Sure, and we had a seminarian here, Brother Gabe, for years, that was phenomenal. I mean, he was an outstanding seminarian, but he felt like it changed for him, and now he's an amazing husband and father, and it can happen that way, and if it does, God bless him. And no doubt in my mind that boys turn out fantastic. The next thing we're going to move on to is we're talking about 4 things that have been mentioned as needing to have a solid Christian Catholic marriage. So do you want to go first?
Yes. So I love TAN Publishing, and they have lots of beautiful things about marriage. And I came across these 4 things for solid Catholic and Christian marriage. And the first one would be self-control and self-sacrifice. Happiness in marriage is it's 2 people, it's 2 individual personalities learning to adjust with each other and beginning in the right way. So not worrying about what the world is telling us, but worried about patience and consideration, forbearance. Yes, please, would you? And naturally denying yourself sometimes. And that's a word, we're like, what? I have to deny myself? We're in a society where when you want something, as you snap your fingers and it shows up, or Amazon delivers it. I mean, it's...
With the drone.
Yeah, with the drone, it shows up. But one of the biggest tragedies in married life, I think, is when one or both of the parties have not learned to respect the rights and wishes of the other. You have to really think about, how is this going to affect my spouse? And that comes back into that denial and self-sacrifice. And so we've got this triangle here, and on one side we have the part of the marriage we love. It's that happiness. It's pleasure, joy, and happiness. We got married. He's on that white horse, Prince, and
Pretty much how she lives every day.
And then on the other side, a little more reality. I'm just kidding, honey.
Ouch.
We have suffering, because you are going to have suffering. You're just naturally going to have. You're going to have forbearance, and you're going to have forgiveness. So you've got all of that, but what helps us get to that that true meaning of love is what's here, what's our foundation, and that would definitely be God. You can't survive all of these things without this. It won't work. You have to have this. And in the Catholic Church, even more, you have to have the sacraments. So you have to have that grace.
You got to build it on something, right? I mean, you have to have something you go back to. Otherwise you really have no background. So there's always has to be something in the river. You ever heard that? Was reminded me of another joke, actually. It's like there's three rings. There's three rings in getting married. It's the engagement ring, the wedding ring, and the supper ring. But it all goes towards the same thing.
I married him for his humor.
Love.
The second thing, the first one was the self-control and self-sacrifice. The second thing, equally important, would be simplicity. And I think this is so very important. How things in life should be simple. Keeping up with the Joneses out of your marriage. Financial troubles is typically one of the biggest reasons why couples fight or eventually split. And so keeping things, you don't need to have this big engagement ring or this house right away. Take your time because you've got enough with the world against you and you don't want to add to that. So,
well, pre-Cana is phenomenal. I mean, have you guys involved in the pre-Cana program by any chance since you're getting married? No?
You're probably
James, did you guys go through it?
There's some requirements that you need to.
Yes, we're probably jumping on it a little too much. You'll get to that. So pre-Cana is the program that you go through prior to getting married. Yes, they call it pre-Cana. And one of the beautiful things, we got a lot out of it, but one of the things that's really helped us, and this is simple, is that if we're going to spend more than $50, we have to talk to each other first. And that has saved us so many times.
But yeah, because I don't know. Being married for how many? 84 years. Would you say that financial issues is one of the primary friction spots through the years?
Well, I never thought money was important, so it didn't really matter.
It's not important, but it's required.
Right, yeah, but when you're raising 4 kids and you're putting them in Catholic school and everything else, you just have to...
So you just go and get used to not having any money.
Right, yeah, so you just do the best you can. But I see that in a lot of different... Being a lawyer, I've seen that in a lot of people's lives, is that the financial thing is a major stress. Sure. Especially when you're trying to start out.
Yeah. No doubt. Well, and that kind of goes back to the original point of self-control and self-sacrifice, because it's like, well, I mean, what are some things you might have to sacrifice? I mean, I might have to sacrifice driving this car. Maybe we need to get...
How many times I did that?
Yeah, right? Exactly.
He's still doing that.
I don't plan on ever not doing that.
One day, maybe. But the other thing, too, is, you can go back to your church, and, I know we have, this Financial Peace University that Wendy Paxton does, and it's amazing. So just look to your church for resources to get yourself on a straight path.
And pre-Cana for us, we ended up spending 6 weeks with Cana.
Yeah, we were 6 weeks.
So it was one day a week for 6 weeks. How long was yours, Jim? You guys just did recently.
Gosh, there were different things. You had the sponsor couple, you had meeting with the priest, and you had the weekend that would just get over with in a weekend.
Oh, okay.
But it was, I can't remember exactly. It was a series of every week for a while, for about 8 sessions.
We have a thing called 3 to Get Married, which is a weekend one. But there are longer ones. I actually got to do, I think, the 1 hour version. So, there's all I learned that through the suffering, this side was good.
Okay. Well, it was really good for us because a lot of people, and you guys all have friends, or you guys all do have friends that have sort of jumped into marriage. You guys really didn't talk, they didn't really talk a whole lot about stuff before you get married. And that's just I never thought about talking about it. So how many kids do you want? And that's what the whole pre-marriage, the things like pre-K and everything sort of go through. How many kids do you want? How many kids do I want? Do you want them to go to Catholic school? Do you want to stay home with them? Do you want to be able to have the lights on after 6 p.m.? Do you once? Those are funny jokes. Sorry. Let's see. Just anything along those lines. What kind of do you want to run? You want to run a 401k? Do you want to do a Roth IRA? Anything along those lines is people normally don't think about it until after they're in the fact. Now all of a sudden, wait, you want to have access to my bank account? Really? Okay, because I usually pay my own bills. You know what I mean? So it's all the little stuff that you normally I never thought about discussing that stuff with her before I got married. I was like, I was more worried about where we were having the reception. It's like, it's an open bar, right? An open bar? That was... So it just sort of helps develop, and you can either, like you said, there's a lot of different resources now, and there probably was then that we just weren't exposed to. But the more resources, the better. And a lot of them can be fun, and you'll end up running into other couples that, are going through the same things. So if you have friends that are going through this stuff, sort of recommend it to them. Like Don's talking about, there's 3 to get married, there's the different things that James is talking about, there's the weekend-long things for people that are time-constrained, there's the once-a-week thing, depending on what works out better for you. I travel a lot now, so it would be one of those things if we could get it done in a shorter period of time, or stretch it out even further. We only had, how long did you give me after I proposed?
5 months.
The 5 months, so it was kind of limited. Compared, but there's no hard fast rule as to how long you have to be engaged nowadays. So it's one of those things that you just figure out what works for you and get a chance to get in there and discuss it, and having an organized plan to attack all of those different potential road bumps is the way to go.
And there also is a lot of resources to continue working on the marriage. Continue, because you work on it before, but then during and
I got a whole thing on that.
It's an act of will.
Yes.
So it goes back to the
number 1, self-control and self-sacrifice. Number 2 is simplicity. Number 3 is marital chastity. So you think about chastity before you get married, right? Keeping yourself chaste. But people don't often think of the two words marital chastity. What does that mean? So that means you're, as a chaste spouse, avoiding the near occasion of sin. You're avoiding where you are in certain establishments. For us, it's like we don't have lunch out with the opposite sex. We don't have separate friends. Our friends are our marriage friends. So that's just something that we feel strong for it with each other, and it's a respect thing. So once you get married, the two become one, so that's where you are. You're not separate people. So for us, if we're going to have lunch and it's just like one person, a guy or a girl, it's like we have to do it together. But it's not very often. We don't have guys and girls night. That's just not something we do.
Well, there's a current, Mike Pence, the vice president, he gets beat up all the time because he actually said that publicly. I don't go have business dinners with women or, members of the opposite sex without my wife present. And that way, the guy is never, nobody's ever going to be, pardon?
Just in a group setting. But
right.
Right, yeah. So, it's just one of those, so not only does he know he's doing the right thing, but then no one else can go back and say, oh yeah, well, there was that time and, so-and-so said that they saw you lean over and, kiss her on the chin. It's like, there's never going to be that opportunity. And that's just respect for your spouse, is all it is. And it's showing respect, and it might not even be something you have to verbally say. People, was it Deacon Sutter said when one of our children was baptized years ago, you may be the only Bible your neighbor ever reads, right? And that's only from the actions that you actually have in anything that you do. And so that's kind of where that stuff comes from.
And just little things like, I remember that one of my friends, I say friends, acquaintances that I knew from where we used to live in Dallas, Georgia, she was having a birthday party for one of her kids. I was like, oh, fun, I'd love to join you for your kid's birthday party. Where is it? She goes, Hooters. I'm like, oh, well, I'll get back to you. I'm going to check our schedule. And I was like, Mike. And he was like, you're busy. And I'm like, of course. But it was just like avoiding places that would have that temptation for us to sin. So one of the biggest things I think that when we talk to at marriage talks or workshops and so forth, is if counselors are there, I've always asked them, what is the biggest thing that you see? Financial is definitely one, but the other one actually is pornography. And so if you let that enter into your marriage, you are going to have some big issues. You have to protect yourself. It's unrealistic. It's not a reality. It's a fantasy world. So you have to keep yourself in your eyes and what they see clear. You can't let them enter into a marriage. Because it says, remember, it's better to lose one of your members than your whole body thrown into Gehenna. So you just have to think about what you allow your eyes to see. Again, it goes back to that self-sacrifice and self-denial. And that's for the good of your marriage. With God's grace, a man and a woman can overcome and avoid this attack on marriage. As Scripture says, a man without self-control is like a city broken into and left without walls. That comes from Proverbs 25:28. So think about that. You have to have your walls and you have to have your marriage protected. And the fourth one is to avoid contraception. So let's talk about that. That's always one that it is kind of uncomfortable, but we'll get through it. And that's to avoid it. So I want to share with you about that. We've been married now for almost 20 years, and we do practice natural family planning, so I'll share with you a little bit about that. But I do have a question first. What do you think it means to contracept? What does that mean? Yes. So it's an artificial barrier that you willfully partake in because you're trying to prevent pregnancy. Artificially, correct. So when is contraception morally acceptable? Never. Never. So what?
So I'm sorry. I had to kind of boil this down myself because when you say that word, it just ends up sounding like one of the nuns pointing a ruler at you. But contraception, honestly, it's if you're using some sort of a barrier method, then all you're doing is using your partner for self-gratification, and that's all it comes down to. And one of the arguments that we'll end up getting a lot, and it's a fair point, is people will be like, well, if you're doing natural family planning, aren't you avoiding getting pregnant also? It's like, yeah, but we're open to it. I mean, we're actually open to life. We're actually trying to naturally plan exactly when we become parents. So that's kind of the big distinction. I'm not just using my partner as a means for self-gratification. Does that make sense? I never want to step on anybody's toes, and I'm sure it can be taken different ways by different people.
And you can feel free to talk to us after, but so I'm going to touch on it. So when you think about like God's plan and design for marriage, if you don't really open up and entertain the thought process of natural family planning, it's kind of like you're saying, God, I want you in every part of my life except for the bedroom. Stay out there. Like, you have to let him in all parts of your marriage, in every aspect. And natural family planning does work. I will tell you now, it works. If you have.
It's funny to hear a mother of 6 say that. And people are like, "Wait, what?"
Our youngest is 7, and our oldest is 18. And for the ladies, I'd be happy to talk about that. The Clear Blue Easy Fertility Monitor that people use to try to get pregnant, you can use to prevent. So you know when you are ovulating and you know when to avoid. It's pretty simple. And unless you have other complications going on, which I can direct you to the right people to help with that. But it works. It's very good system. The beautiful part about it is, for us, is if you're learning about natural family planning, the couples that practice it, less than 5% divorce. So
the latest statistic I heard was at 0%.
0%. There's probably like a.
And what do you think the natural? What do you think with the rest of the general population is when it comes to divorce?
50.
Oh, I think it's over 50. I think it's closer to 75%.
So if you'll allow me to explain a little without going into lots of detail, you watch your luteinizing hormone level, and you know when you can avoid. What's beautiful about the few days that you have to avoid is that you have to do something else. And it's actually a beautiful way to reconnect. And for those of us who practice natural family planning, we refer to it as like the honeymoon cycle because you're constantly in it. You have to avoid each other for a little bit, and then you can be husband and wife. You have to avoid each other a little bit, and then you have to be. So it's, to me, if you think about it, if you saved yourself up to the point of your wedding night, how anxious and excited, you actually can still continually live through that with your marriage now. Not quite as much, of course, because that's a little different, but you still do. So what do you have to do during that time? Well, natural family planning teaches you spice. And spice is...
spiritual, physical, intimate, creative, and emotional.
There you go. He's got that down.
I look pretty forward to that week. Yeah.
All I do is read a book.
Yeah, buddy.
No, but we watch Netflix series or we play board games. We actually do something else that connects us emotionally.
It's keeping both partners engaged.
It is.
And it doesn't allow you to kind of fall off the track. It's like if that's the particular time of the month that actually you are trying to prevent becoming pregnant at that moment, then you find some other way to engage. I mean, God made marital relations wonderful for a reason. You know, he wants you to engage and go forth and populate the earth. Not that everybody needs to have 4 or 6 kids or whatever, but at the same time, you know, you need to actually still remain together in a sense. And so those spiritual, physical, intimate, creative, and emotional are five different like topics that you can use to keep yourselves engaged in some way, shape, or form. And it can be anything like she talked about, from a Netflix series to, what's that place, Wired and Fired, or they have one of those places where you go like paint pottery. That wasn't my choice, but
it was a lot of fun.
It turned out being pretty good, and I still have my keychain dish. You know, and it turned out pretty fun. But it just gives you something else to do, which I always thought was interesting anyway. You know, so.
And I will say that you actually, as a woman, know exactly what your body's doing. When it's suppressed and it's under artificial things, you don't understand what your body is doing. It's natural, biological, and emotional cycle that you go through. So you really get to understand and know what's going on, which is beautiful to know.
Knowing the why, and not just the what. You know,
right.
Knowing the why makes all the difference, really, in anything out there, any profession you're involved in. Like I'm a nurse. I used to be a paramedic, and so like one of the arguments between the paramedic and nursing world, because there's kind of a middle ground there, so there was a friction between the two professions, because are the medics kind of encroaching on the nursing world? And the argument always was medics know what to do, they just don't know why they're doing it. And so, and that sort of falls over, I found, into a lot of different people's professional worlds. Like, you know why you're doing what you're doing, selling what you're doing, fixing what you're fixing, engineering what you're engineering. That gives you direction. So if you know the why and not just the what, it gives you the direction. The direction is to maintain our strong marriage.
And if you think about like history, contraception up until the 1930s, every Christian church taught that contraception was actually wrong. And then we slowly started to tip over into this downward spiral where the Anglican Church first broke that tradition, if you will, and it approved contraception within marriage when they had a serious reason. So it just started this downward spiral from there, because what happens is, well, I got a headache. That's serious to me, right? So I must obviously need to take care of this issue. So there we began with contraception and then eventually abortion and so forth. So all of those things began to break down the marriage, which is where you see where we are now with the divorce rate the way it is. So if you think about the sacrament of marriage and where it is to be elevated, and then the tools that God gives us to keep it there, and how it, yes, you're going to have bumps in the road, but you have to stay strong. So I'm hoping that we've shared with you what the gospel says, what it means to be a sacrament, and the different things that keep that marriage at the sacramental level. And we'll end with some things that we think throughout our 20 years, well, it's 20 years in May, we're almost there, that obviously your weekly Mass attendance is huge, because you need that constant renewal of grace, and regular monthly confession, for you to constantly keep yourself in check,
Which we don't always.
Yeah, like I said, you try. Your goal is to do that, but there are some months you might say, oh, I need to get myself in check.
My mother was just beating me up about that yesterday. She said, do you know how long it's been? Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Last Tuesday is a good time for men. We have a Tuesday night of formation.
Yes, your night of formation. And the other thing is spiritual guidance. Don't ever hesitate going to a priest and sitting down with them, like Father Paul, and say, I need help. Now he's hiding. And then another beautiful thing to do with each other is to pray the rosary. Have Mary right there, front and center, and pray the rosary together. And then when you have children, pray the rosary with your children. Have them do a decade, or if they're little, or, if not, maybe they just do the Hail Marys. 3-year-olds can do 3 Hail Marys. It's awesome. And then pray for your spouse. We think about praying for things that we might personally need help with, but pray for your spouse every day. Adoration. You guys can do that as a couple. Beautiful. Pray together, read scripture together. Marriage retreats. We've done several marriage retreats. We love doing those periodically. I remember one of the first ones we did when we were first married for 5 years. We had to list the top 10 things that were important to your spouse. I couldn't fill it out. I felt so
She just
bad.
wrote her name down 10 times.
No, but like I did the financial and this, and what I realized is that we had kid 1 or 2, I can't remember now, and like I was so focused on being mommy, I was like, oh my gosh, I had to go back and go, I'm so sorry, I could not fill this out, and it just made me go, oh, I need to like take a step back and really consider what, why we're here in the first place, how this kid got here. Join a Bible study is always so fruitful. I remember very early on in our marriage, I kept running into this one lady who she had these kids. She was always at peace and very calm. And I kept going, what is it? Like, you got these 4 little kids, and I'm over here with 2, like this. One's on my leg, one's crying. And she goes, we have this Bible study. Would you like to join us? Like, yes, because whatever you have, I want some of that.
I think it was because we had childcare.
That's
She's like, yeah, you can do that.
But finding that sisterhood, if you will, that those women in Christ that you can be around to help lift you up. The other thing is the catechism, which I said earlier. If you take the Article 7 and go through it and just read a little bit each day, it's beautiful what the catechism in our church teaches about the sacrament of marriage. And renew your vows, which we've done 5 times now, 4 or 5 times. I can't remember now, but we're overdue. We're actually going to do that coming up because it's our 20th year. So renew your vows, because when you first get married, you say those words, but so much is going on surrounding that event. So when you actually get to come back around and do it again, it is so wonderful to hear those words, for richer, for poorer. It's so beautiful to hear that. There's sickness and health. And you have something, is it next Sunday?
Next Sunday, yeah.
Yes. That you will have the opportunity to renew your vows should you guys be interested in doing something like that.
Well, something we actually just had Father Paul do recently, too, is he blessed our wedding rings.
Yes.
It's like any opportunity you get for any amount of grace. It's can't do anything but help,
During that marriage renewal thing that we do, they'll actually do a little blood, and they'll take the rings off and do a little thing right during Mass. So it's really kind of beautiful. And the dinner is outstanding. Roses, the whole 9 yards of wine.
Let's take an opportunity to put in a plug. There's also a 25-hour marriage retreat weekend in Rome. It's the Chick-fil-A place, Berry College.
Oh, really?
Really nice place for a retreat. It's awesome. Allison and I went last year, and then this year we're going to be taking part in giving one of the talks. But it's a 25-hour marriage retreat, so for you and your spouse. It's not much more to say about it there. Just get away and
where do you see more of it? Is that being advertised in the bulletin?
Yeah, gosh, where's that? Where can we? Well, can you email me or else?
Online.
We'll give you the information.
Just go under adult faith formation. In my adult faith formation booklet, there's a whole article on that. And there's every marriage thing that we're doing. We're doing a lot of them. We're actually going to start trying to do a marriage checkup, like a yearly marriage checkup here, a little date night, sort of like the one we're having on February 11th, but it'll be a little simpler, and it'll probably be in here with a little dinner date night marriage checkup, which Father Martin is going to be involved with also.
Oh, really?
Yeah. We have all kinds of things going on here for marriage.
The date for the marriage retreat, 25-hour, is March 18th, so a little more than a month. March 18th is, actually it's 17th and 18th. So March 17th, March 18th.
It's a great facility, too. I mean,
it's awesome.
It is top-notch facility. The food is great. The environment is wonderful. You're out and away from things. And
We know it's the largest campus in like the South.
the mountain range or whatever.
I think it's the largest college campus in North America.
Well, I know it's the largest in the Southeast at least. It's massive and it's beautiful. The property out there is amazing. It really is.
What is it called?
Windshade?
Windshade. Yeah.
Something like that. Yeah.
It's really nice. Just look it up. It's really cool.
It's very common.
Very college.
Mm-hmm. Out in Rome.
How far away is that?
Rome, Georgia?
I don't know.
But it isn't even up as far as
It's more like 2 hours.
Something like that. It's a good drive.
Can
It's
engaged
beautiful.
couples go?
Pardon?
Can engaged couples go?
Maybe. Let's look into that. I'm not really sure. I really more for married couples, but I mean,
But once you're in the
for
club,
pre-K and you couldn't make anything else,
married
this
is
might
ideal
fit.
for engagement.
Yeah.
So the other things are just having sacramentals around your house and having things like that to constantly remind you. So crucifix, We have one in every room. Have one in your car. Like, just have things that remind you. You have one by your computer if the computer is something that you have to write in. So just have something everywhere reminding you of your faith.
So my mom, I keep bringing up my mom because I adore her, and she was part of the RCA program. And she's got so many sacramentals. I think it was Father Reynolds that came over to our house years ago, and he's like, boy, Satan really takes a beating here, doesn't he? There's like holy water fonts and crucifixes everywhere.
You got less salt.
Yeah, exactly. That's right.
And just turn off the TV. Just turn off the TV at night. Enjoy each other. I mean, there's times where you want to do, watch TV, maybe Super Bowl or something important, but just take the time to reconnect with each other all the time and try to go out on a date at least once a month. It doesn't have to be anything big. It can just be go hike Sawney Mountain. Or
Date your mate. One of the reasons I think I married her is because her favorite restaurant is Waffle House, which is and so and it's something you can get in and out in like less than 45 minutes.
For under $10.
Yeah, right. I mean, if we give the kids enough Benadryl, they don't even realize that we were gone. Gets to pretty quick.
And as far as the natural family planning questions, I'll be around for a little bit if you guys want to ask questions. But I do want to say to you that it's such a beautiful gift that you could give to each other. And the other things, the IUDs and the other stuff, birth control, they actually don't prevent pregnancy. They just prevent its implementation. Or implantation, rather, sorry. So just something to think about as you go about looking more into that.
I have just two things right now, but one is the CD, and I have a whole bunch of them. I can even give them to you right now. But it's called Contraception, Why Not by Janet Smith. And now it's called Cracking the Myths of Contraception. It's one of the best talks that I've ever heard on the horrors of contraception, really, and all that it does, but also the beauty of the theology of the body and natural family planning. It's just such a beautiful thing. And it is never too late to start doing this natural family planning. I was a little slow learner on the road. And I did some really bad things, but later on, God forgave us, and reversal kinds of things, and lots of prayer, and, so it's never too late to change and start following church teaching. And as well as Stacy is a great resource, Stacy and Mike, for natural family planning. With the couple that's going to do the marriage talk on the 11th, we're going to schedule them to come back with Dr. Kathleen Rabiel, probably, to do a full talk on natural family planning. But it's going to be on March 4th, I think. It'll probably be in here. But if you go to the Valentine's dinner, they're going to touch a little bit on some of these issues, just lightly, because it's a mixed audience. But then they're going to come back for full-blown teaching on natural family planning. And they tie the current Pope Francis's Laudate Si, his apostolic exhortation, with the great teaching of the Church in Humanae Vitae. Mm-hmm. It just is a beautiful connection, and it's something that blew me away when I first saw it. So lots of things coming up, and thank you so much.
Anything that focuses back on your marriage is what's really important. And the last thing I want to say is that you don't need to do all these things. This isn't something we think that everybody needs to do. Now, if you feel like you can, you're called to it, great, because it's going to do nothing but benefit you. But otherwise, anything that you can do occasionally is something that will strengthen your marriage. And I think that's something anybody can attest to. Just finishing up with what we started with, I just want you to think of it, keep this in the back of your mind if you take anything away. Matrimony is a sacrament. This is what I said to begin with. And as such, it is a sign to the world of the invisible God living in our midst. The living God who bears fruit in the lives of two people. And I couldn't be happier to be a part of it. So thank you guys for listening to us. We appreciate it.
We have a little bit of time now, maybe 10 or 15 minutes for questions or comments or group discussion or whatever we want to do. Because I think while this is kind of